I'll kick things off. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our kickoff presentation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which we call Hacktober. Our presenter today is Bill Kehoe, who is the State Chief Information Security Officer and the Director of Washington Technology Solutions. Bill joined WATEC on August 1st, 2021, and prior to that, he was a CIO for Los Angeles County in California from 2017 to 2021. Bill has a long history of managing information technology departments in local and state governments, including more than 15 years with Washington state agencies and counties. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Gonzaga University and a project management certificate from the University of Washington. WATEC has many cybersecurity awareness activities planned for the month of October, and we encourage you to go to our website. There's a link in today's chat. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Fantastic. Now I just need to make sure I can share my screen. I was not having good luck with that in another meeting, as Deanna can attest to.
How I can see it.
Okay.
It's the right one too, Bill.
That was the all staff. That was the all staff. Yeah, that was bad. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the lunch hour to get together and launch Hacktober and Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So this is an exciting month, and I am encouraged to see some of you here, and it looks like we have a pretty good turnout. So I get to launch Hacktober this year. It's a great honor. And as Andrew said, you know, I have many hats. I'm the WATEC director, the state CIO, and currently the interim or acting state chief information security officer when Vinod Brahmapuram left. And I can tell you that, you know, I have admired and respected all the great work that security professionals have done, you know, in my role as CIO, but really stepping in and seeing the great work that the Office of Cybersecurity and that team does, and the work that agency security professionals are doing is really inspiring. And I have just really enjoyed my time as the acting CISO for the state, and got to know some folks that I probably wouldn't have got to know as well. And even though, you know, it's an additional workload, it's been something that has been really good for me. I think all of us in our careers, right, we look at things and look back and say, well, you know, that was pretty tough, and you know, I probably shouldn't have done that because it's an issue, but man, did I learn a lot? Did I meet some great people? And that's how I'm feeling about my my interim role here as the state CISO. Now, it's not going to be permanent. Don't get any ideas on that, but I've enjoyed my time immensely. So what is Hacktober, and why is it important? So Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which we're calling Hacktober, really is a national campaign to increase cybersecurity awareness. And that's really important. As we know, our diligence around cybersecurity and cybersecurity awareness can never be enough. We're never fully aware and say we're done. It's a process, it's a journey, and it's a maturity, I think, for many organizations. So that's the way I look at this. And it's great that 1 month out of every year, you know, we can come together and really have these great conversations and share ideas, share successes, share concerns. And then after this month is over, I'm glad it's a full month, by the way. I think that really helps everybody. Come away smarter and more aware, and take things back to our organizations to improve the overall security posture of our agencies and our state. So that's really what it's about. And we all know that cybersecurity is a team effort. We'll talk more about that, but I want to emphasize that right up front as a takeaway for today, that this is a team effort, and the more we all are working together, both within our agencies and also as an enterprise, the better we're going to be. And, you know, the days of I'm going to go do my own security thing and you go do yours and let's hope that things work out, those days are really over if we're going to stay ahead of the very sophisticated attackers that we have today. It requires us to work together as one enterprise. And so I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like from my perspective, and maybe some areas that we need to continue to work on to make sure we are on the same page around security. But this is a team effort, and it requires us all to come together, especially when we have incidents, you know, that could impact multiple agencies at the state, which we never want to have. But when we do, we want the ability to quickly come together and do the analysis and the remediation and the recovery is absolutely essential to our success. So I hope you share that sentiment, and that's a big takeaway from today. As I said, you know, I really appreciate all the work and commitment from our cybersecurity professionals. So I think this month is also for me is a time to really shine the light on the importance of our cybersecurity professionals. I don't think they get nearly the visibility and the recognition that they deserve. A lot of great work happens behind the scenes, work that we don't even know happens, right? At all hours of the night and during the day to protect us. And like I said, in my interim role, I've come to see that that commitment, that work ethic, and to tirelessly protect us. So I just want to acknowledge our cybersecurity professionals today in my segment, and let you all know that what you do is incredibly important, both to our residents, to our state, and to the agencies you serve. And your work is never done, and it's incredibly valuable and appreciated. So I just want to start the presentation with that, and give some encouragement and to our security professionals that don't get that a lot. Right? I also want to thank our privacy. If we have any of our privacy professionals here, I tell Katie Ruckel this all the time, and I truly believe it, but we have, I think, one of the top privacy programs in the country, if not the top. And what Katie and her team do on a regular basis, including most recently putting out some training on privacy, it's now part of our LMS, is so important because security and privacy have to work together. And without that aspect of privacy, it really diminishes security. So that partnership has to be strong. Access to our information and the principles and the frameworks around privacy that Katie and her team have developed are essential. And all the training and webinars and getting the word out on privacy is something that Katie and her team do well. And I know there's a growing privacy community in the state of Washington and agencies, and I want to highlight that as well. That's something we want to continue to grow, increase that partnership with our security professionals, and really show, you know, the country that how important it is that we have this security and privacy partnership and working together again to protect the information and make sure the access to the information is appropriate. All right, so give our security and privacy professionals a virtual round of applause here. You know, if we were in the same room, you know, we would probably give them a standing ovation, but This will suffice. Okay, so moving on. I did want to recognize that Governor Inslee did issue a proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That says a lot. And I'll just share a story that when I interviewed for the position of WATEC Director and State CIO, I did have an opportunity to talk to Governor Inslee and asked him, hey, you know, what are some of your expectations for me? And, you know, without hesitation, he said security, cybersecurity, keeping our data, our infrastructure safe from attacks. So I think that's significant for all of us to understand, is that our CEO, our governor, has this as a very high priority. And that's who we work for, and I agree with it. And so I want to do everything I can to secure the state and protect our residents' data. And I think you all share that, right? That's a priority for us. So let's make sure we're treating it as a priority, and that we're doing everything we can so that we have that trust in government, because that's what security is for me. We're doing this right, and we're avoiding those incidents and breaches. It really puts a lot of trust in government. When we have things that aren't going well in security, that's when that trust in government can be compromised, right? So we always want to highlight the fact that cybersecurity and good security practices and policies and standards and how we execute on that really, really should enhance our trust in the trust in government of those we serve. So events for this year's Hacktober are really aimed at educating those that are attending our sessions and how to take actions that will be discussed and recommended to protect your accounts and devices, as well as provide insights and other security related topics. So I know there's several great speakers that are lined up. I hope you can attend those and come away with 2 or 3 outcomes that you can apply both to your professional and your personal life. As we know, with identity theft and other things, right? It's not just about what we do here at the state. It's also, you know, really applying that to our personal lives and making sure that we're following good security practices in our personal lives, in our households. There's a lot of bad actors that are attacking us, not just at our work site, but also in our personal lives as well. So let's make sure that we're paying attention to both areas. I wanted to note a mindset change that I've seen around security. You know, I've been a CIO, as Andrew introduced me, for a while, and I've seen a significant change around the perception and mindset around security. You know, security used to be, you know, one person, maybe 2 person that really protected or tried to protect and standardize on some areas. It has grown, obviously, in significance over the years. And it used to be very much an IT thing, a back office thing. I am seeing, and I'm very encouraged by this, that we all are accountable and responsible for good security practices. It's not just an IT thing. And I know there's some more work to do in the state to really get that across, but we should all be concerned around security. And that really applies horizontally across the state and within our agencies. If you look at what good security practices and standards and tools, platforms, you know, they really apply to everything we do. You know, even if it's not an enterprise security service, if you look within WATEC and the services that we provide the state, security is a critical component of all our services. That's why I say it's horizontal across our agency and not siloed within just OCS. So we have to keep that in mind as we put investments forward. I mean, we're talking about investments now in our biennium, DP packages. And one of the things we're looking for is, is there an acknowledgement of the role that good security plays with this investment, and is it accounted for? So our investments and looking forward to our cloud movement, all of that has to include good security practices and standards. So security is really that horizontal connectedness, if you will, that applies not only to our individual agencies, but across the state. And if we do it well, that will be very evident. And, in early in my years, security used to be a inconvenience, right? Have you seen that? Where it's like, oh, that's so inconvenient, I have to put this password in or this biometric, or and I never remember my password. So I'm just going to write it on a yellow sticky and stick it on my monitor, right? And that way I'll remember it. So, those days are really hopefully gone, although I'm sure there's some semblance of that still happening. But security should not be looked at as an inconvenience. It's essential. And are there areas that maybe we can streamline? You bet. But if we don't have good security and it's looked on as a hardship or something to make our lives difficult, then we're not looking at it with the right mindset. So I would encourage us all to, really examine, as I have over the years, to look at the mindset around and the perception around security, around your security staff and organizations, and make sure we have that right mindset around good security practices and security awareness. It's really important. It's really important because bad perceptions, bad mindsets can spread. And then suddenly we've got a cultural problem. So let's take this month around Hacktober and really examine where we are and really promote and verbalize the importance of good security. And it's not an inconvenience, it's a necessity as public servants that we need to live, and it has to be part of our everyday lives here in the state of Washington. I've also seen over the years more emphasis around privacy, data protection, which is very, very important. We have to know where our data is. We have to know the classification of that data. We have to ensure that data is secure based on that classification. When there's data sharing, we need to ensure that we have the right controls in place. If there's encryption requirements. So a lot more emphasis, I think, not just on security standards and controls, but also data and all the protections, because that's, our residents really trust us with that data. We need to make sure that it's secure and that we have the right privacy and security controls around that. So I've seen a good shift around the importance of security, more awareness, more organizational visibility around security. One of the things that we should be doing as leaders is, if our security professionals don't have a seat at the table at times with our agency exec teams, where they can communicate risks that any particular agency may have at that particular time based on maybe vulnerability information, that's a big miss, right? You can't keep your security or your CISO in the back room. You have to give them the visibility so they can have the right conversations around risk with agency leadership on a regular basis, so that leaders understand where the risks are and they can help prioritize the resources and the remediation necessary to close those risks down. So that's another challenge and outcome for you today. How often does your CISO or your security professional have visibility at your executive team to talk about the risks that are facing your agency? And if they don't have any, can we change that? Should you change that? That would be a great outcome from Hacktober and Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So what can we do as employees around security awareness and doing things better? So put in chat what you think, but let me just run through some things that I think are really important. Security awareness training. I've been in organizations where it was mandatory every year for every single employee, no matter what level, to take cybersecurity awareness training. And we don't have that same rigor in the state of Washington. Now, should we? I think so. And I think we're going to do some things within our governance structure around cybersecurity awareness platforms, and then training opportunities. But I would say that if we have some agency leaders here, it's cybersecurity awareness training should not be an optional training. It should be mandatory. And here's why. Because the lack of awareness, and keep me honest here, Jeff and Tracy and Stevens, the lack of awareness is probably the number one reason why organizations get breached. It's not so much the hackers and the bad actors as much as it is the lack of awareness of our own staff. One breach of, let's say, a compromised Office 365 email account, just one breach can lead to a pretty significant incident for the organization, because a compromised email account that is then taken over by a bad actor is a launch pad for additional phishing emails and malware. So that's why security awareness training, I've heard some organizations say, well, we have 60% of our staff that took security awareness training. Isn't that great? Well, no, not really, because the other 40% now you have to worry about, right? So it's not a, hey, we got a C, so we're good. It's no, we need an A+ in this area. So another challenge, I think, for us that we're going to be working on, and I know there's some agencies that do this really, really well. So I applaud you for that, and you can be models for the rest of us. I'll also tell you that when you get a phishing email and you actually recognize it, you should report it. But a lot of the bad actors, what they're going after is credentials. They're going after your username and password. They're going after privileged credentials. That's the golden ticket, privileged credentials, because then they can traverse our networks and get into more things, servers, additional agencies. So we have to get the message across, and this is also part of security awareness training, that whenever you get an email and you click on something and it says, hey, I'm your friendly help desk person, can you verify your username and password for me? And these attacks are getting more and more sophisticated. I would advise all of us to get this word out, is anything that requires your password and username, whether it's a home account, online service, or at work, do not enter the information. Verify it if you need to, but do not enter it. This is the gold to the hackers, is credentials, because once they get a credential, then other compromises occur and they can spread really bad things, malware, ransomware potentially, once they get that credential, which then goes to the importance of security awareness training. So anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that there's a lot that we can do as employees, and we don't have to be security professionals to really emphasize and prioritize these types of things. And we shouldn't leave it up to our security professionals to be the ones holding the bag on this. This is all of us that need to be accountable to good security awareness training. And then at home, sometimes we get a little complacent at home. And I know Cybersecurity Awareness Month isn't just about our workplace, but at home, making sure we have the right protections and we have MFAs. I hear some people at times say, well, I don't have MFA on my online banking. It's like, okay, good luck with that. That's just a terrible practice. Because it's a pain, and I have to look at my phone and put the code in. And again, this cyber security should never be a inconvenience, right? So just making sure that our home accounts, our bank accounts, and our really important accounts that we do online, that we have really good security practices there. Identity management or identity theft is a big deal, and it's happening everywhere. The dark web has all kinds of information about people. So we have to protect ourselves as much as we can. All right. And here's some recommendations from our friends at CISA. And Tracy, you were just with CISA, so this should resonate. Hopefully they talked about this. But we talked about enabling multi-factor authentication. There's a reason why MFA is so important, right? It's one more control that the bad guys have to get through to compromise our accounts. It's very, very important. And I think we're doing a fairly good job with that. However, that's another thing that it can be an inconvenience, but let's not let our guard down on the importance of that. Strong passwords. One of my former passwords that I got chastised for was I used to use Kehoe 1. That's just not, I'll be vulnerable here. I'll be vulnerable here. I've come a long way. But that's not that's an example of a very bad password. That's very easy for someone to guess and to actually compromise your account. So there are all kinds of really important rules around strong passwords, and I hope that we can get those out to folks, using different sequences of phrases in your passwords, things like that, that are very difficult to crack. So that's important. Recognizing and reporting phishing. We talked about that. That is a common area of lack of awareness. And let's also really acknowledge the sophistication of phishing emails. They are, in the last 2 to 5 years even, the sophistication of phishing emails is unbelievable. I mean, it used to be misspellings and, I'm going to transfer millions of dollars into your account if you only give me your bank account information, and it was pretty easy to spot. Now, spear phishing, targeted phishing towards people, let's say in finance, where they study you, they study your social media, they know who your friends are through that, and then they send you an email, and you're maybe the payroll person in an organization. And they say, hey, I'm so-and-so, can you change my direct pay to this bank account? And, oh yeah, I know that person, and all the research had been done, and guess what happens? There's a lot of organizations that have made those changes. And where does that paycheck go? It goes to that new bank account, right? So this is pretty common stuff that's occurring. And I know in an organization I was previously in, that occurred on, I would say, a dozen or so accounts where they compromised through spear phishing, a payroll clerk. So it's not just the phishing email that's you can pick up. It's this level of sophistication. It looks like it's coming from the help desk. It looks authentic. It looks like it's coming from someone you know or an organization you know. Don't trust anything. Don't trust anything. And verify everything before you click on it. That's the best way to do this. And then hover over the URL. A lot of people don't do that, but if you hover over the URL, you can usually pick up that it's not coming from the proper source. Updating our software to close known vulnerabilities. How are we doing in this area? You know, do we have software that needs to run on Windows 2003 because our vendors aren't updating their software? And so we have to run on a server that Microsoft isn't updating the operating system. How many Windows 2003 servers do we have out there because of that particular issue? Or the software that's running on that, whether it's homegrown or a vendor, has to run on that operating system because it can't be updated. This is going to be an emphasis for me in that we work with agencies to identify those areas. They're extreme risk, extreme vulnerable. We've got to push our vendors to update their software. We have to be diligent in saying it's not okay to be running on a old version of any type of operating system because our software isn't updated. We should not be okay with that. We should be diligent. We should push back on our vendors. We should prioritize this work, and we should reduce our risk and our vulnerabilities in this area. And I know that this is a difficult thing because you got to keep our business going, but there's, this is something we can't just keep ignoring, right? And we got to recognize it, got to prioritize it, and we need a plan to remediate, especially if these are public facing services, and they're running on an old version of Windows. That's where we're really vulnerable. So we're going to be partnering much heavier with CISA and other federal organizations to get as much information and collaboration as we can going forward. So here are some of the events, and they're actually fun security events. Security can be fun, right? So these escape rooms, this is a competition event for state agencies. So if you're a state agency, get your team together. We were just talking about our cornhole competition in Watech. That's been pretty competitive. Now we're going to go to escape rooms, and so we really would love to have some fun and some great participation across the agencies in the state. And then those agencies with the fastest times will have a runoff in a virtual escape room during the final week of October, and then there'll be a champ. And that's a pretty honorable thing if you're the escape room champ. I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know what the prize is here, but it's got to be pretty good. So get your teams together. And how many on each team? What's the per team thing here?
Maximum of 8, 4 to 8 people.
Okay. There you go. That sounds like a blast. And then cybersecurity awareness presentations. There's been many more of these. And I think I've seen the presentation list. It looks like there's some great presenters coming forward. So we'll learn a lot and take away a lot from those folks from the public and private sector. And then our very own Jesse Wachter from Watech's OCS will be hosting Kahoot quiz games. And we had a preview of this on our Tuesday call with the CIOs and CISOs, and it was a lot of fun. And Jesse does a great job facilitating this. And so I would encourage you to take part in this as well and answer those. She threw us some softball questions, but I know they're going to get harder as the week goes on. And for more information, you can go to watech.wata.gov for some additional information on any of these activities. So let's take advantage of these as part of this month and the activities that we have. So we can gamify Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's good. So keeping on this theme of community and how important it is for us to work together across the state, across our agencies. I just want to hit on this a lot. We have an initiative in WATEC. We're calling it One WATEC. And it's very, very important to us as an agency that we don't have 3 or 4 agencies working in silos in WATEC, but we have one agency and we're all working together towards common goals. And security is one of those goals. As I said, we have enterprise services here. Every one of those enterprise services should have a very, very important component around cybersecurity and security tools and platforms and services, or they're not going to be a very effective services. And so that requires OCS to work across our organization with all of our services, networks, DNS, our SAW, you name it. You know, we're all working together so that we can protect the state. So that's a theme, I think, that, as I mentioned, a takeaway from today that I hope you understand is that the more we work together, the more that we're standardizing across the enterprise on our tools, on our platforms, on our configurations, the better we're going to be. And that means we all have to pull together on this, and we can't have folks going off and saying, well, I don't want to configure that endpoint that way, or I don't want that turned on, I want this turned on. We all have to understand that as soon as we start to do that, we fragment and we compromise our overall enterprise security. So that's why we have governance. That's why we're going to get some agreements through governance on, you know, enterprise standards, configurations, and tools and platforms, so that we can all benefit from that, and that we don't have a few agencies kind of going off on their own, and they might protect their own agency, but then from an enterprise perspective, we're not working together. So I can't emphasize that enough, how important that is. It's not about WATEC telling people what to do. It's really us coming together and agreeing on enterprise tools, platforms, standards, configurations, so that we can all benefit. Make sense, I hope. All right. Did want to talk a little bit about our IT enterprise governance committees. Some of you may not have seen this or been a part of these, but we have launched what I think is a very successful initial launch of our enterprise governance committee structure. We have our business management council and our leaders coming together around the state. It's a very powerful group. We have some agency directors that are part of that, and they're really there to help guide us and give that business perspective around our strategy, our investments, and key disciplines like we've been talking about: portfolio management, legacy modernization. We talked about innovation at the last meeting. And these are the things that our agency leadership is very, very interested in, but we're also educating them on their responsibilities in these areas. And that partnership, that strategic partnership with IT is very important. So we're emphasizing that. And then we have our CIOs and our technology leadership around the Technology Management Council. They're coming together and have been. That was one of the first groups that we established. And then information security, our enterprise security governance has been, I think, up for 4 to 6 months. And that's bringing all of the security professionals around the state together, all of the agency's security officers. And I think this was something that was fairly new to the state. I'm not sure if there was a governance for security that was stood up before. I'm very, very pleased that we have it now, because we have a lot of things to talk about, and we have great participation. I would say that of all of our committees that we've stood up, in the information security meeting is always over 100 attendees. Very, very exciting, because that tells me that people care, that people want to be involved in those discussions, in those decisions we're making, and that we have CIOs and business folks as well as our security professionals in that meeting. That group reports up on a regular basis, or will report up to our Business Management Council and our Technology Management Council, get some guidance there on things as needed. And I will tell you that we are going to be talking about cybersecurity at our Business Management Council. If I can get our chair to put that on the agenda at a certain point, which I'm sure she will, but we're going to be talking about security to our business partners and what their roles and responsibilities are. So that's going to be exciting. So I think the takeaway here, we're bringing the state together from a business perspective, from a security perspective, from an architecture perspective, from a CIO technology perspective, and really working together, trying to work together as an enterprise for the betterment of the state. It's exciting. We're going to keep getting better at it, and I really appreciate the participation so far. I wanted to highlight some work groups that we have on our enterprise security governance. There's an incident response plan that we're developing for the enterprise that Mr. Jeff Jordan knows all too well. And then we have a tabletop exercise planned, I believe, in November, maybe October.
November 14th.
November 14th, thank you. And then 14110, which is burned in our memory and will ever more live as an incredibly important policy and standard. Stevens Fox is leading that with many with help from across many agencies, and so we're excited to finally update that. Security design review is going through a transformation, an important process that we want to streamline as much as possible, get rid of our backlog, and yet really have the value that brings to the state. There's a SSV log visibility group as well, really looking at what can we securely share around, I think that's around identity across the enterprise, so that we can have more views into our data when we look at it from a SIM perspective. There's a group around international travel and some standard policies there. And then there's a group around security awareness and training. So this is really healthy to understand that this isn't WATEC going off in the back room, putting something together and saying, thou shalt do this, right? No, this is how we're operating now as a state. We're bringing people together. We're working on things as a community, and then we are getting that buy-in and that communication out. This is a state thing. This is not just a WATEC thing, and we're moving forward. Very exciting, and you can see the importance of these work groups and what we're doing. So what are some other things that are coming down the pike or in play around security and privacy? We're going to be putting an emphasis and sharing ideas around how we can improve our hiring and retention of our security professionals. That's an important concept. I know we're looking to the military and other areas, internships potentially on how we can do better there. Always looking to assess and improve our enterprise security services, and then working with the community on customer feedback on that. We're going to be putting together a enterprise security strategic plan for the state. Again, that will be a community effort. We're going to be looking at all our policies. 14110 is only one. There's many others around security, making sure that we have the right policies in place and get some agreement on that, and then making sure we're all accountable to those policies. That's important. Incident management plan we talked about with some tabletop exercises. Risk management plan is also something we don't have yet that Stevens Fox is going to be leading as well. And then, as I talked about, improving our federal partnerships with our federal partners, MSISAC, CISA, FBI. We are going to be looking heavily at improving our local government collaboration. That's really important, not just for the grant opportunities that we have, but also just as a best practice that, again, the more we work together in the state, but also with our local government partners, the better we're going to be and the more informed we're going to be. And then we're standing up a federal grant committee structure per the federal guidelines. So there's a lot happening, a lot that we're trying to fill some gaps and some things that we want to get in place, which is exciting, so that we can continually improve our security posture and protect our residents' data and our infrastructure. So I'm going to stop there. I thought I had a 20-minute presentation. So much for that, but I hope this was beneficial and that you got something out of this and that you understand that we're all in this together. We got some great things happening. And again, I want to really shout out to our security professionals, our privacy professionals that are doing a great job on a daily basis. Really encourage you and let you know you're appreciated and valued, and what you do is extremely important. So that's all I got today, Andrew.
All right.